Hello, I'm Brett Knowles from PM Squared Consulting. This short vignette reviews how we help clients solve a common problem, and that is, how do we differentiate between a strategic objective and a tactic or an operational objective? Here's the thing. It turns out that strategic objectives really have to pass two tests. One is, how critical is that objective to the success of the organization? The more critical it is, the more strategic it is. And secondly, how long does it take to achieve that objective? Specifically, objectives that can be completed in a few months are generally more tactical than strategic, changing a form, updating a browser screen, etc. But we can grade things from that elapsed time to create impact from low to high. The timelines vary from organization to organization. 1 to 5 years is typical, but illustrative only. The second criteria is that the objectives have to have a critical impact on the organization's overall mission. And again, things that have a low impact on the organization's mission are generally less strategic. Now, neither of these tests are foolproof, but if we look at the two of them in conjunction, we can see some interesting relationships. So, for example, we can take a look at one project, and that might be a low timeline to implement and low impact. I'm going to suggest that may be more tactical than strategic. Typically, strategic things are longer timelines and address more critical issues. So for a case of nomenclature, we go from tactical to operational to strategic. All of these things are necessary. A tactical initiative might be something like changing the layout of a drive-through window, changing a format of a form. Operational may be moving two operational units together, a small acquisition. And strategic is obviously some of the larger, longer-term initiatives that we typically think of. So if we take a look at one project, we may grade it as having a slightly over medium impact on the overall mission statement. But it's going to take about 5 years to accomplish. A second initiative perhaps has a significantly lower impact on the overall mission and a shorter time period to complete. And in fact, by the time it's done, may have a smaller impact on the overall organization. So if we begin looking at different initiatives this way, we can begin to see what the differences are between them. So in this case, we have 10 candidate objectives. Some of them are going to be tactical, some are operational, and some are strategic objectives. So let's take a look at 3 objectives. Curb illicit activity, establish clean trade, and communication. So curb illicit activity. Timing, how long is it going to take? In this case, it's going to take a long time for us to curb illicit activity. Criticality, that's pretty critical for the business. And the size of the issue is huge. So what ends up happening is it plots a dot over here relative to the other objectives. Now, since we've only put one up, it's not charting very well. Establish clean trade. In this case, you know what? Timing, we can do that pretty quickly. Criticality, you know, it's fairly critical. And finally, size of issue, not that big. Ends up being an objective that looks a bit like this. And then finally, communication. Communication, that's a fair-sized issue. Pretty critical. And in this case, sort of a moderate-sized issue. So it ends up showing like this. In this case, by the time we had completed evaluating the 10 potential strategic objectives, we found that there's a small cluster. 5 of them were clearly strategic objectives that should appear on the strategy map. There's another one that might be operational or strategic. That warranted some additional debate. And there are 5 that clearly did not pass the test, and for this year at least, were not going to appear on the strategy map. By the time we're done, we're able to create a strategy map that the organization could buy into and understand why the strategic objectives were there. Now the next step, which we can cover in another YouTube, is how it is we came up with a weighting to identify which of these objectives were strategically important for the organization to focus on in this coming year. To learn more about this tool and others, please join us at pm2consulting.com.